The most dangerous thing a man can do is let a woman underestimate him. I did it on purpose. My name is Ralph Huston, and on Friday, April 3rd, 2023, she made that mistake. I was at the kitchen table in our home in Pacific Heights, San Francisco, drinking my first coffee, still in yesterday's shirt, reading nothing in particular. Normal morning. Quiet morning. Mildred was already dressed. Full armor, blazer, heels, that particular shade of lipstick she wore when she had board meetings. She set a manila envelope on the table next to my mug without breaking stride. "My lawyers drafted something," she said, scrolling through her phone. "I should have done it from the beginning. I've worked too hard to leave anything to chance." I looked at the envelope, her firm's legal letterhead on the label. A little too crisp. A little too ready. I wasn't surprised by the document itself. I was surprised she'd finally moved. "What is this?" I said, though some part of me, some quiet, watchful part, already knew. "A prenuptial agreement." She said it the way you say the dry cleaning's ready. Flat. Logistical. "I know the timing's not ideal, but we've been married for 2 years, Mildred. Which is exactly why we need clarity going forward." She finally looked up from her phone, smiled, that particular smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Take your time reading it. My lawyers are available if you have questions." She grabbed her bag, walked to the door, didn't kiss me goodbye. She hadn't done that in 7 months. I'd counted. The door clicked shut. I sat there, the envelope just sat there with me. I picked it up, put it down, picked it up again. 11 pages. Her signature already on page 9. Her lawyer's contact cards paper clipped to the front like this was a real estate closing and I was just supposed to sign and move on. I read every word, and somewhere around page 6, where my assets were described as unverified and presumed minimal, something shifted in my chest. Not anger. Clarity. "Welcome to Dad's Raw Revenge. Get settled, because this one is going to take you somewhere. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. Trust me, you're going to love it here." But this story doesn't start on Friday, April 3rd, 2023. It starts 3 years earlier, on a Wednesday night in late February 2020, when Mildred Voss walked into my life wearing a black dress and a smile that probably had a terms and conditions section I hadn't read yet. Stanford Alumni Mixer, San Francisco. The kind of event where everyone's either networking or pretending they're not networking. I was standing near the back by the shrimp cocktail, because that's where the real people stand, nursing a club soda and wondering why I'd let my college buddy Dave Jason talk me into coming. "You haven't been out since you sold the company," Dave had said 2 days earlier. "You're becoming one of those guys." "What guys?" "The kind who names their houseplants, 'I don't have houseplants, Dave.'" "Exactly," he said. "That's worse." So I went. Navy blazer, no tie. I was planning 45 minutes, 3 handshakes, and then home to my apartment in Pacific Heights to watch something forgettable on TV. She found me. I know that now. But that Wednesday night in February 2020, I just thought I was lucky. "You're not working the room," she said, appearing beside me like she'd been there the whole time. I looked around. "Neither are you." She laughed, actually laughed, not the practiced kind you hear at these things. "Touché." Mildred Voss. "What do you do, Ralph Huston?" Here we go. I got this question 40 times a night at these events. I'd learned to keep it simple, keep it boring, keep them moving. "Consulting," I said. "Retired, mostly. I dabble." She didn't move. Most people move on after dabble. She didn't. We talked for 2 hours that night. She told me she was CEO of a mid-sized logistics firm called Vosscore. Growing fast, investor-backed, the whole package. She was sharp, funny in that dry, understated way I can't resist. And she looked at me like I was a puzzle she hadn't solved yet. I should have recognized that look. I've used it myself. Now here's what Mildred thought she knew about Ralph Huston that February night. Comfortable consultant. Nice apartment. Sensible shoes. Low-key by nature. Here's what was actually true. 3 years before I met her, I'd quietly sold a supply chain software company I'd built over 9 years to a private equity firm in Chicago for a number my accountant still gets nervous saying out loud. No press release. No LinkedIn announcement. No celebration dinner. I signed the papers, went home to Pacific Heights, ordered a deep dish pizza, which San Francisco cannot do properly, for the record, and watched a documentary about penguins. That was it. Money that makes noise attracts problems. I'd watched enough men implode chasing recognition to understand that the quietest guy in the room is usually the most dangerous one. Mildred thought she was dating a comfortable, low-profile consultant. She was dating a man who owned stakes in 11 companies, held real estate across 4 continents and holding entities she'd never heard of, and hadn't told a single person his actual net worth in years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We dated for 14 months. She took me to her company galas, introduced me as her brilliant low-key partner like I was some kind of artisanal accessory. I wore the role well. Cocky pants, modest watch, nothing flashy. My buddy Dave pulled me aside at one of those galas, about 6 weeks before the wedding. Loosened tie, 3rd drink in, that look on his face. She introduces you like a prop, you know that. She's proud of me, Dave. He set his glass down. She introduces her company's Q3 results with more warmth than she introduces you. I laughed it off. Saturday, May 22nd, 2021. We got married. Small ceremony. Her idea, intimate, she called it. Efficient, I thought, but didn't say. 22 people. Fog sitting low over the bay the way it does on San Francisco mornings, that can't decide if they're beautiful or just cold. Her investors sent flowers. Expensive ones. I remember thinking, why would investors send wedding flowers? I filed that thought away. I file everything. The first year of marriage was good. I mean that sincerely. Then came month 18. Sunday, November 9th, 2022. She was at the office. Again, I was home reviewing investment documents at the kitchen table. We shared a household drive, tax records, insurance, property deeds. Standard stuff. I wasn't snooping. I want that on record. I was looking for our homeowner's insurance renewal, and I took a wrong turn through a subfolder labeled Archive. And there it was, a document titled Exit Strategy, R. My first thought was, that's a very clean font for something that's about to ruin my Sunday. I opened it. I read it twice. Then I sat very still for about 4 minutes, which if you know me is 4 minutes longer than I sit still for anything. 12 pages. Thorough. Clinical. Our marriage laid out as an asset management structure. My financial profile. Or what she thought was my financially adjacent, but legally separate. A timeline broken into years. Year 2, consolidate joint accounts. Year 3, increase her public asset base. Year 5, initiate dissolution. And on page 7, a name. Brett Calloway, partner at Voscor. Smooth hair, firm handshake. Had shaken my hand at 3 separate company dinners. Always called me buddy. I closed the laptop, went to the kitchen, made pasta from scratch because some situations require the kind of focus that only comes from kneading dough. Opened a bottle of Napa Red, set 2 places at the table. And then, sitting there in the quiet of that kitchen, I understood something that was almost worse than the betrayal itself. She hadn't chosen me in spite of my invisibility. She'd chosen me because of it. Think about it. No social media presence. No Forbes profile. No ego requiring public maintenance. A man who'd sold a company for a number nobody outside his accountant knew about, and celebrated with a pizza and a penguin documentary. I was, in her careful estimation, the perfect financial hiding place. Her investors were asking questions about her lifestyle, her spending, her judgment. A steady, modest, low-profile husband neutralizes that noise. Makes an ambitious woman look grounded. Makes a bored exhale. I wasn't a partner. I wasn't even really a husband. I was a strategy with a wedding ring. And the most dangerous part, she was right about everything she thought she knew about me. I was invisible. I was quiet. I was exactly what she'd researched. She just never thought to research what quiet men do when they've been underestimated. She came home at 8:47 that evening. Something smells good, she said, dropping her bag by the door. Cacio e pepe, I said. Sit down. She sat. We ate. She told me about her day. I told her about mine, the edited version. We had wine. I cleaned up. We went to bed. And while she slept, I stared at the ceiling and made a decision that would take the better part of 2 years to execute. No confrontation. No explosion. No scene. Because here's the thing about a long con. The only way to beat it is to run a longer one. Which brings me back to Friday, April 3rd, 2023. The envelope, the 11 pages, my assets, unverified and presumed minimal. Minimal. I almost laughed out loud at that word. I finished my coffee, set the mug down, picked up my phone, and called the one man I should have called 5 months ago, William Bull Tanner, my attorney. Old friend, sharper than he looks, which is saying something because he looks like a man who argues with referees at his kids' soccer games. Been with me since company number 1. He picked up on the second ring. Bull, I said, I need you to come to San Francisco. When? Soon as you can. That bad? I looked out the window at the bay. Beautiful Friday morning. Fog just starting to lift off the water. No, I said. It's about to get that good. What did you find? Let's just say someone's been playing chess, I said, with a man who invented the board. I'll book the flight tonight. I hung up, poured my second coffee, looked out at San Francisco on a Friday morning in April. Gray, gorgeous, completely indifferent to everyone's problems. She thought she married a modest man with a comfortable life. She married the most patient man she'd ever met. And patience, I've learned, is just revenge that hasn't introduced itself yet. If you have been listening for a while, do us one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without ever doing it, but it costs you nothing and it means everything to us. Hit the like button while you're at it and drop your thoughts in the comments. Let me tell you something about patience. Most people think it's passive, quiet, weak even. They're wrong. Patience is the most aggressive thing a man can do. It's waking up every morning knowing exactly what's coming and choosing to wait anyway. Choosing to smile. Choosing to pour the wine and ask about her day and sit across the dinner table from a woman who has your exit strategy saved in a subfolder labeled Archive. And not flinching. Not once. That's not weakness. That's war. Bull Tanner landed at SFO the morning after she dropped that envelope. First Saturday in April 2003, looking like he'd slept on the plane. Because he had. He walked into my office in the financial district, carrying a legal pad, a gas station coffee, and the expression of a man who already knew this was going to be interesting. Small office. Desk, 2 chairs, window facing the wrong direction. Paid for in cash through a management company Mildred had never heard of. She thought my office was our kitchen table. That was the point. Bull sat down, took a long sip of his terrible coffee, looked at me. Talk, he said. So I did. All of it, the mixer in February 2020, the 14 months of dating, the wedding in May 2022 when I found the file, Brett Calloway's name on page 7, the 5-year timeline, the prenup landing on my kitchen table like a grenade wearing a lawyer's letterhead. Bull didn't interrupt. That's rare for Bull. The man interrupts judges. When I finished, he set down his coffee, leaned back, stared at the ceiling for a long moment. She documented it, he said quietly. 12 pages, I said. He looked at me directly. That's either incredibly arrogant or incredibly stupid. Both, I said, which is exactly what we're going to use. He picked up his legal pad. What do you want? I slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. He read it. His eyebrows climbed slowly, the way they do when Bull Tanner, who has genuinely seen everything, sees something new. You've been sitting on this since November, he said. 5 months, Bull. I've had time to think. This is going to take time to execute. She gave me the timeline herself, I said. Year 5. We've got runway. He looked at the paper one more time. Then he did something I hadn't seen him do in 15 years of working together. He smiled. Okay, he said. Let's build something. We got to work the following Monday. First thing, a new holding entity. Bull registered it in Delaware over a weekend. We called it Harlan Ridge LLC. Clean. Boring. The kind of name that makes accountants yawn and lawyers stop reading. Boring names hide interesting things. I learned that from the first company I ever built. The first move through Harlan Ridge was the one that mattered most. A 12% stake in Voscor. Her company. Her baby. The thing she talked about at dinner. At galas. At breakfast. When she was barely awake. The centerpiece of her entire 5-year plan. The asset she was most determined to protect from me. I bought into it. Silently. Through Harlan Ridge. Through a secondary holding company that connected to Harlan Ridge the way a shadow connects to a man. Only visible if you know exactly where the light is coming from. She never looked for the light. Bull spread the purchase across 3 tranches so no single transaction tripped a disclosure flag. Clean. Invisible. Boring on paper. About 8 weeks after she dropped that prenup on my kitchen table, I owned a quiet piece of the very company she was planning to protect from me. She made me dinner that evening and called me her favorite person. I told her she was full of surprises. She had absolutely no idea how right I was. Here's the part people don't understand when I tell this story. They expect me to say I checked out, got cold, stopped caring. I didn't. I made dinner, remembered anniversaries, walked the Presidio trails with her on Sunday mornings like we always had, asked about her board meetings with genuine-looking interest. Because the moment I changed, the moment she sensed even a slight shift in temperature, everything unraveled. And Mildred could read a room the way most people read large print books. Effortlessly, instantly. So I gave her nothing to read, smiled, showed up, poured the wine, and every Saturday morning drove to the financial district and quietly dismantled everything she thought she'd built around me. Nobody said revenge had to look like revenge. Sometimes it looks exactly like a happy marriage. But I want to be honest about something, because this story isn't just about strategy. There were nights, and I won't tell you how many, where I sat at that kitchen table alone after she'd gone to bed and felt something I didn't have a clean name for. Not anger, not even sadness exactly. Something closer to grief. The quiet kind that doesn't announce itself. I had genuinely loved this woman. Or I'd loved who I thought she was. Which might be the same thing. Which might be worse. There was one night in particular. December. Rain hammering the Pacific Heights windows. She was asleep. I was sitting in the dark kitchen with a glass of whiskey I wasn't drinking, looking at nothing, and it hit me all at once. The full weight of it. Not the betrayal. Not the plan. Just the simple, stupid fact that I had walked into that mixer in February 2020 and thought I was lucky. I had wanted it to be real, even after I found the file. Some stubborn, foolish part of me had wanted it to be real. I sat with that for about 10 minutes. Then I poured the whiskey out, rinsed the glass, went back to bed, and the next morning I drove to the financial district and kept building, because wanting something to be different and letting it destroy you are two very different choices. I made mine. By that summer I moved into the logistics play. She talked about her vendors constantly over dinner. The Fresno contract is bleeding us. The Chicago carrier can't hit last-mile targets. On and on. I nodded, sympathized, refilled her glass. I was also taking notes. Two of Voscor's largest freight suppliers were running thin margins and quietly shopping for capital partners. One in Phoenix, one in New Jersey. I bought into both. Not controlling stakes. Nothing loud. Just enough presence at the table when contract renewals came up. Just enough that when Mildred's team sat down to renegotiate, the people across from them were several invisible layers removed, connected to her husband. She was negotiating against people who reported to me. I'm not going to pretend that didn't feel a little good. I'm only human. That fall, Bull called on a Thursday morning. No greeting. "Brett Calloway," he said. I set down my coffee. "Talk to me." He runs a personal investment fund on the side. Small. 8 LPs. He's been quietly shopping for someone to anchor a second raise. Quietly. My favorite word in the English language. "How much?" I asked. $2 million to anchor. He'd take less from the right partner. "Become the right partner," I said. "Arm's length, Bull. 3 layers minimum. He cannot know it's me. Ralph," he called me buddy. To my face. 3 times. I paused. "I want 4 layers." Bull actually laughed. First time in months. 4 layers, he said. Got it? By early winter, I was a silent limited partner in Brett Calloway's personal investment fund. The man whose name was on page 7 of my wife's exit strategy, the man who'd shaken my hand at 3 company dinners and called me buddy, was now, completely unknowingly, in business with me. Take a second with that. By January 2024, here's what the board looked like. Harlan Ridge, holding 12% of Voscor's largest contracts, both carrying my capital. Brett Calloway's fund, anchored 4 layers deep by Ralph Houston. And Mildred? Mildred was having her best quarter yet. Voscor was growing. Her board was happy. Her investors were patient. She had no idea the foundation under everything she'd built had a different owner. She was standing on my floors and calling it her house. Friday, April 3rd, 2024. Exactly 1 year to the day after she dropped that envelope on my kitchen table. "Everything's in position," Bull said when he called at 9 a.m. "You want me to start the counter document?" "Not a counter," I said. "A revelation." "How thorough?" "I want her lawyers to sit down when they open it. I want the senior partner to stand up and close his office door. Give me 3 weeks." "You've got 2. 2 weeks later, Bull walked into my office carrying 47 pages, set them on the desk like he was handling something that could detonate. I read every page, slowly, carefully. This is everything. Everything, Bull said. 11 tech investments, 3 unicorn valuations, real estate across 4 continents. The logistics network, both suppliers fully documented. Harlan Ridge's 12% stake in Voscor, and the Callaway Fund. All 4 layers fully traceable back to you. I looked at the document. 47 pages. Her prenup had been 11. She brought a knife. I came back with a different kitchen entirely. Send it, I said. The response came a few days later. Not from Mildred. From her lead attorney, Gary Ostroff. Senior partner, 23 years in family law, a man who by reputation had seen absolutely everything. Bull told me the call lasted 6 minutes, that Ostroff spoke the way people speak when every word is a step across ice. Mr. Tanner, he said carefully, your client's holdings are considerably more substantial than previously understood. Yes, Bull said, they are. Huston would like to revisit the terms of the prenuptial agreement. Bull looked across the desk at me. I shook my head. Once. The terms are hers, Bull said. Mr. Huston wouldn't change a word. Long silence. I see, Ostroff said finally. I'll be in touch. Bull hung up, looked at me. How do you feel? He asked. I thought about a Sunday evening in November 2222. A clean font on a document that was never meant for my eyes. A ceiling I'd stared at while the woman beside me slept and dreamed of year 5. I stood up, put on my jacket. Hungry, I said. Let's go to Clement Street. There's a moment in every long game when the board shifts. Not dramatically, not with an explosion or a speech or someone flipping a table. Just a quiet, irreversible tilt. Like a ship that's already decided to go down but hasn't told the passengers yet. That moment came a few days after Ostroff's call. I wasn't there when he called Mildred, but Bull has a friend at Ostroff's firm, and that friend said the senior partner closed his office door, sat down, and didn't come out for 40 minutes. 40 minutes. I've been in enough negotiations to know what 40 minutes behind a closed door means. It means the math doesn't add up the way you thought it did. It means someone made a very expensive miscalculation. It means the game is over. Mildred came home early that Wednesday afternoon. That was the first sign. Mildred never came home early. The woman treated the office like a second address, and our home like a hotel she happened to have feelings about. But there she was, mid-afternoon, sitting at the kitchen table in our home in Pacific Heights when I walked in. No blazer, no laptop open, no phone in her hand. Just sitting. I knew immediately, but I didn't let my face know. Hey, I said, setting my keys on the counter. You're home early. She looked at me for a long moment. Really looked. The way she used to back in the beginning, like I was a puzzle she hadn't solved yet. Gary called me, she said, Your attorney? Yes. I opened the refrigerator, pulled out a bottle of water, took my time. Everything okay? I said. Ralph? Mildred. She exhaled, slowly. The way people exhale when they've been holding something heavy for hours and the body just gives up. Harlan Ridge, she said. I turned around, leaned against the counter, looked at her. What about it? You know what about it. Silence. The kitchen was very quiet. Outside, San Francisco was doing its thing. Traffic on Broadway, someone's dog, the distant foghorn off the bay. The whole ordinary world moving like nothing had happened. How long? She asked. Her voice was steady. I'll give her that. Even then, Mildred didn't crack easily. How long what? Crossed my arms. Looked at the woman I'd shared a bed with for 3 years. The woman who documented our marriage like a business acquisition and filed it under archive. Since November 2022, I said. She closed her eyes. Just for a second. Just long enough for me to see the calculation happening behind them. The file, she said quietly. The file, I said. Silence. Longer this time. You never said anything, she said. Neither did you. She stood up slowly, walked to the window, stood there with her back to me, looking out at the street below. I let her stand there. I wasn't in a hurry. I'd been not in a hurry for 17 months. How much? She said finally, not turning around. How much what? How much do you have, Ralph? It wasn't really a question. It was the sound of a woman doing math and not liking the answer. More than your lawyers thought, I said. She turned around, and I saw something I hadn't expected. Not fury, not calculation, but something stripped bare. Raw. She looked for just a moment like a person instead of a strategy. "What do you want, Ralph?" she said. Quieter now. "What do you actually want?" I looked at her for a long moment. I thought about the real answer, not the legal one. What did I want? I had wanted a real marriage. I had wanted the woman I met at that mixer in February 2020. The one who laughed before I finished the joke. The one who showed up to things. The one who asked real questions. But that woman had been a performance. And you can't want back something that never existed. "Nothing you haven't already offered," I said. "The prenup stands. Your terms. Every word." She stared at me, waiting for the catch. "You have 12% of my company." "I do. And the suppliers. Also me, Brett." "4 layers," I said. "But yes." She shook her head slowly, not in anger, in something that looked almost like disbelief. "You built all of that," she said, "while living here, while having dinner with me, while walking the Presidio on Sunday mornings like everything was fine." "You were planning year 5, I said. "I was planning the rest of the board." She was quiet for a long time, long enough that the fog coming in off the bay had shifted, the way it does in the late afternoon, slow and indifferent, covering everything it touches. When she spoke again, her voice was composed, back to the Mildred I knew, the controlled one, the CEO. But her eyes were different. "I underestimated you," she said. I held her gaze. "Yes," I said. "You did." She nodded once, picked up her bag, walked out of the kitchen. I heard the front door close. I stood at the window for a while, looking out at the same street she just looked at. It didn't feel like winning. Not exactly. It felt like something ending that should have ended differently, from the very beginning. I poured a glass of water, drank it standing at the sink. Then I called Bull. "She knows," I said. "How'd she take it?" I thought about that for a second. "Like herself," I said, "right up until the end." The formal dissolution proceedings began the following week. Bull and Gary Ostroff sat across from each other in a conference room on the 34th floor of a building in the financial district, 3 blocks from my Saturday morning office, which I found quietly satisfying. The prenup Mildred had drafted protected everything she'd publicly declared: her real estate, her personal accounts, her declared Voscor equity. It said nothing, not one word, about Harlan Ridge, nothing about the freight suppliers, nothing about the Callaway Fund. Because she'd written that prenup, in a world where Ralph Houston was a comfortable, low-profile consultant with minimal assets, she'd protected herself against the man she thought she married. She had no protection against the man she actually married. Bull told me later that Ostroff sat across that table looking like a man trying to solve a puzzle where someone had quietly swapped half the pieces. "Your prenup is airtight," Bull told him pleasantly. "Every asset your client listed is fully protected." "And his assets?" Ostroff asked. "Not listed," Bull said, "therefore not subject to the agreement." "She'll contest." "On what grounds?" Bull said. "She drafted it." Ostroff had no answer for that. Neither did Mildred. The papers were signed on a Tuesday morning in late May 2024. I moved out of our home in Pacific Heights that week, hired 2 guys, took what was mine, left everything that was hers exactly where she'd put it. Clean. Efficient. She would have appreciated the efficiency if it weren't happening to her. I took an apartment in the Marina District, 15th floor. View of the bay, the bridge, the whole glittering indifferent city spread out like it was showing off. I stood at that window the first night with a glass of Napa Red and felt something I hadn't felt in almost 2 years. Still. Not happy exactly. Not triumphant. Just still. Like a room after a long noise finally stops and you realize how loud it had been the whole time. That kind of still. That summer, Voscor's board called an emergency session. Harlan Ridge's 12% stake, now public through the dissolution filing, had sent ripples through the investor community. The institutional investor who'd been patient for 2 years, the same one who'd sent expensive wedding flowers back in May 2021, suddenly requested a formal meeting. I finally understood why investors send wedding flowers. They weren't celebrating a marriage. They were protecting an investment. Questions Mildred couldn't answer cleanly. A board that was running out of patience. Brett Callaway resigned from Voscor a few weeks later. The official reason was personal pursuits. The actual reason was that his personal investment fund, anchored 4 layers deep by Ralph Houston, had become a conversation he couldn't finish cleanly. I never made a single phone call to make that happen. I didn't have to. By late summer, Voscor's board reached out to Bull. Not adversarially, almost apologetically. They were looking for stability. Harlan Ridge's stake commanded respect. Would Mr. Houston consider a formal role? Bull forwarded it to me without comment. I read it twice. Thought about a Wednesday night in February 2020. A woman in a black dress appearing beside me at a Stanford mixer like she'd been there the whole time. A smile with terms and conditions I never agreed to. You're not working the room, she'd said. I wasn't, but I was paying attention to every single person in it. I called Bull. Tell them I'll take the chairmanship, I said. Not the advisory role. The chairmanship. Someone who actually built the thing. You know she's going to see that announcement, Bull said. I know. And? I looked out at the bay from my marina apartment. The bridge lit up in the late afternoon. Fog rolling in off the water the way it always does. Slow, inevitable, completely indifferent. And nothing, I said. It's just business. On a Sunday morning in early September 2004, I read about the Voscor chairmanship announcement in the business section, over coffee at a small cafe in the marina. Good espresso. Nobody knew who I was. That's still my favorite part. Dave called at 10 a.m. I saw the announcement, he said. Morning, Dave? Ralph. A pause. I told you. You told me she was intentional. I told you the intention might be something you didn't know about. You did, I said. You were right. So what now? Now, I said. Now I finish my coffee. That's it, Dave. I set the cup down. I built what I built. I protected what I protected. She made her choices. I made mine. And you're okay. I thought about that. Really thought about it. The December night with the whiskey I didn't drink. The ceiling I stared at. The pasta I made for two on a Sunday in November 2022, while a 12-page document sat 3 feet away from me on the desk. I thought about what I'd wanted, and what I'd gotten instead, and how sometimes those two things, even when they're completely different, still manage to add up to something you can live with. Yeah, I said. I'm okay. And the thing is, I meant it. If you enjoyed this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family stories. I will see you on the next one.